you're in. My name is Eric Tanz, and I am the chair of the ALA Sustainability Roundtable Online Education Committee. Our webinar today is titled Handprint Parties, a public programming tool for librarians to help communities accelerate towards a sustainable future. Some housekeeping notes. So please make sure to keep your microphone set to mute, as we don't want any background noise during the presentation. And this webinar will be an interactive, action-oriented presentation, and attendees are encouraged to have a pad of paper and writing device, and also to respond to presenter prompts by typing in the chat window. And those who have questions or comments can also type them into the chat window at any time, and we will try to address those during the Q&A time at the end. Our speakers today are Bert Cohen and Steve Butzel. Bert is retired adjunct faculty at the University of New Hampshire, where he team taught classes in sustainable living and systems thinking for sustainable living. And Stephen is the director of the Portsmouth Public Library in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So thank you to Stephen and Bert, and you can take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Steve Butzel. I'm the director here in Portsmouth Public Library, and I'm here with Bert Cohen.
Hello, everybody. Bert Cohen here.
The goal of our presentation is to lead us all to take positive actions for the environment, and specifically to tell you about the handprint party concept we've developed and how you might hold one yourself. So we're going to present information, lead you through some exercises. So we hope you have a pen and paper handy, and we're going to give you each an opportunity to reflect on the actions you want to take that are energizing to you and helpful to the environment, including perhaps holding a handprint party of your own. So let me show you who we are. There's a picture to put faces with names. And Bert, I think you have a question for them.
Well, one of the things is that you can see us, and since we can't see you, it'd be really great if everybody would just go to your chat screen right now and put where you are in the world at this time, and that will give us a little greater connection to who we're talking to and what type of a network we're starting to build.
Great. So we can see we've got some people from Oregon and Salt Lake City, Michigan, California. Wow, this is awesome. We love it. Great. Well, keep it coming. That's awesome.
And you see where Steve and I were in the pictures. Well, this is our beautiful city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And from this view, you can see that you could look at this as a system, which is very helpful from a sustainability point of view and a handprint party point of view. Because in the handprint party, we can attend to both the social, the economic, and any other issues that are coming up that are going to support the environment. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. And since I've been teaching for over 60 years, one of the things that is a challenge for me today is not being able to see you. But one way we can do it is to start to get some information together. And a useful thing as we think about a handprint party and sustainability is to know the system we're in. And the most important system is to start with is ourselves. So if you have your paper and pencil ready and you see on the screen where it says you, just put your name in the center. And for about 1 minute, I'd like you just to fill in the circles that represent the elements in your life. These will be the elements in your system. So for example, I like to walk, so walking is one. I have grandkids, that's another one. I'm a chair of the Portsmouth Blue Ribbon Committee on Sustainability, that's another one. So anything that comes to mind, just put it in and start writing now, name in the center, and all of the elements go. We'll give you around 40 seconds, and whatever you get is fine.
Others examples might be the organization you work for, the parent organization of that organization. Maybe you're on a board or a volunteer for an organization, hobbies, travel. So you can really sketch out your personal systems map of anything that comes to mind that fills out your life system.
And you'll notice that we have one circle there that has a circle off it. So for example, chairing the Blue Ribbon on Sustainability connects me to members of the City Council. So that's another way that our map starts to reach out beyond just the first initial circle. So you have around another 20 seconds to put in anything that you would like.
I know for public librarians, we have boards of trustees or city department heads. For some of you who are in university settings, you might have university presidents, you might have other affiliations with other librarians and associations. So really it can be a broad map for your personal map. So we'll give you just maybe 10 more seconds as we finish this up, and then we're gonna move on.
And I would just mention that if you need to finish while we're talking in the next slide, fine. And then set this aside because we'll come back to it at the end as a resource for the party that you might want to plan.
Okay. So having started to get familiar with our own personal systems, it's worth noting that living our life affects the system and results in both positive and negative impacts on the environment. And so the handprint party concept is built on understanding our footprint and decreasing it while we increase our handprint. So let's take a look at the footprint and handprint a little more closely.
And when I work with students or just talk to my friends, anybody who's conscious about the environment is aware that by everyday living, traveling to see a relative in Norway, my mother-in-law is 98 years old, I know I leave a footprint. And that's important. It's an important event, and yet it impacts the environment. And because I'm aware of all the things I do, I can walk around and feel pretty burdened and pretty weighed down with the effect of the footprint that I'm putting out, because the footprint is making the environment less functional. And so if we were to think about that heaviness, is there a way to move from a burden to make it a more positive experience in life as we move forward and work for ourselves and our kids in the future generations? And I'd like to just share a little story about the handprint. Steve and my friend Greg Norris, who works down at Harvard teaching a life cycle analysis class, in his class, he discovered something that was pretty unpleasant for him, which was he taught the whole course on life cycle, showing what products were doing in terms of the environment. And he asked his students, would it be better if you were born or not born? And almost unanimously, his students raised their hand, it'd be better if they weren't born. And so Greg was thinking, this is really not the message we want to send to our students or to anybody, because it's depressing and it makes us less motivated to do good things. So, this is where he came up with the handprint. And the handprint is, rather than focusing on what we're doing that is negative, which we want to know, and we can do that. There's even a website, you can calculate your own footprint. And once you know your own footprint, which might give you an indication that right now most of us are using 3.5 worlds, which we can't sustain. So what do we do that's positive? And Greg came up with saying, okay, let's engage in activities that will actually not only neutralize our footprint, but make it positive. And I'll tell you a short story here. When he started the handprint, he had a colleague at UNH, and she was a graduate student. She calculated her footprint and said, you know, at that time, compact fluorescent light bulbs were big. She said, if I could get 100 families to put in compact fluorescent light bulbs into their house, my footprint would become positive. But she was a graduate student. She didn't have a lot of money. So she went to Home Depot and told them her idea and said if they would donate the bulbs, she would personally go out and educate 100 families on how to install these. And she did that. And that was a way that she went from being negative in terms of her footprint to being positive. So here's what a summary that Greg Norris put together in one of his presentations that I particularly like. So what are net positive benefits? First of all, a footprint reduction ultimately is discouraging and limiting with diminishing returns. So I walk to work. I do a lot of things that I think most of you who are listening would do in terms of recycling, but we're never going to get down to zero. It's always going to be living is going to cause the environment some deterioration. So what is a handprint and what can it do? What I'd like you to do right now is read the 5 points to yourself and then put the number of the one that tends to resonate most with you, just on having some importance to you now for whatever reason. So read the 5 and put a number into the chat box, and that's another way for us to take a breath and get you to work a little, because we're working too hard if you're not doing something. Okay, so go ahead and see if you pick one.
Great, we're getting some input here. Adding meaning to work, feeling that the world is better off with you. Great. Maybe there'll be a few more that will come in.
So you can keep these coming. We'll give you another just 10, 15 seconds to put one in. There comes another one.
Linking organizational goals with sustainable outcomes. That's great. Okay, so what we've talked about now is how you can conceptually understand having a net positive impact in the world and not being so discouraged, but actually feeling that there's a positive outcome that's waiting out there for us if we just take action. What we want to tell you now is about these handprint parties that we've developed. And what exactly are they? They are educational programs held in collaboration with community partners that encourage positive action around a wide range of sustainability topics. So now we're going to show you some examples that we've developed and implemented over the last year and a half. And we hope that by showing you these examples, we might help stimulate some ideas of your own. So here's a quick snapshot of 5 handprint parties that we held. They were hosted here at the Portsmouth Public Library, and they all involved collaborations with other organizations. Some were more successful than others, and today's webinar is another step in refining their effectiveness and distributing them to others. So let's take a look at each one of them briefly.
Skip the straw. This was a pretty hot topic nationally. It drew a lot of people, and one of the big things we learned from this was to have a coalition of groups sponsoring it. And this particular workshop or a handprint party actually had 3 very interesting sponsors: a local restaurant, an elementary school, and an NFO, Blue Ocean Society. All were concerned with plastic from a different point of view. So they came together, and that was a pretty powerful workshop.
Great. And all these posters were designed by one of the librarians on my staff, so we can help with poster design too. The second one was about active hope and lifting our spirits. This was about the sustainability of our spirit, a sense of empowerment and overcoming a general sense of malaise. We drew upon the writing of Joanna Macy, and this workshop was led by a local Unitarian minister who did a fabulous job.
This workshop was one where we brought out a lot of the gardeners, and it just struck people as being very practical. How could we connect our personal gardens and landscapes to the larger ecosystem in a positive way? We had UNH professors, we had many people who were well into this and shared information that really enlivened the group.
Next, we did a handprint party focusing on supporting local economies. We talked about how supporting local economies is good for the environment and how to go about doing that. We have a Seacoast local organization who led this handprint party. And one example was something as simple as using cash with local merchants that help circulate local dollars better than using a credit card.
Button Up was a very practical workshop on everybody who lives in any type of a dwelling can make it tighter, more energy efficient, save money. We had people talking about energy audits, about how to put on solar panels. We had people who were very knowledgeable. And what was nice about the workshop, people came in who had already done a lot of this, so there was great sharing.
So in addition to the parties, we want to tell you about some actual outcomes where there was a direct impact and a ripple effect from a handprint party. And who you see on the screen there is a picture of my assistant, Barbara, who attended our very first handprint party. And she left knowing in her heart that there was a need for recycling or better recycling services in her senior housing. And to make a long story short, she started out by speaking to her housing manager, didn't get the response she wanted. She went to some city officials who redirected her to other contractors. And ultimately, with the help of a new house manager, they put in place an enhanced recycling plan for a building of over 50 to 60 residents. And she's very proud of this, and so are we. And some of the takeaways are that, you know, achieving a sustainability goal often requires persistence. It doesn't always come easily, but that ultimately every one of us can make a difference.
And right now, I said earlier that we would use our systems map. So if you would pull out your systems map, and you can see the 5 workshops that we just gave you a quick thumbnail sketch of. Would you think and see what comes to mind from your systems map, from what we said? Is there a theme or is there a topic that is close to your passions and heart? And if there is, whatever comes to mind, it can be a very small thing like skip the straw, or something much larger. Would you just type in a theme or an idea that might come to your mind now about a handprint party? So if you'd go ahead and do that, that'd be great.
Don't worry about whether we're going to hold you accountable to have to do anything, but we just love to know if any of these topics sort of stand out, or if you might have any ideas that are passionate for you that might form something in the future with our help. So if you feel risky and are up for the challenge, we'd love you to maybe type in a topic that's relevant to you or that stood out to you. So we've got some people are saying the landscape to the ecosystem. Some people are saying, honestly, all of them. Zero waste, great. Skip the straw, that's excellent. So these are all, we really appreciate your feedback. climate change readiness. Excellent. Yeah, these are all terrific. So this is the kind of momentum that we want to build by holding handprint parties, and by leading this webinar today is to try to get everyone excited about possibly maybe even hosting a handprint party of their own. And we're here because we want to help you to do that. So what we've talked about today, you know, are all these possibilities, and you've begun sharing some of your interests. What we'd love you to do now is that if you do have an idea for Handprint Party, especially if you haven't registered with Eric in advance, if you could type in your name, your contact info, and your Handprint Party idea, if you haven't already done that, or maybe if you're willing to do that again, what we'll do is send you a planning template that will help you structure the planning process. And we'll make ourselves available for a phone conference. So if you'd be willing to type that in now, that'd be great. And if we need to, we can always contact you afterwards. There has been one question, Bert. How many people have come to these parties?
We've done them over about 1.5 years. We've had one probably up to 30. We've had them down to just 2 or 3. So we're still prototyping them. What we have found is the people who have come, it's had a big impact, because not only does it build the action on the environment, it's building a community and an attitude within our neighborhoods that we find has lasting effects.
So the size of the attendees has ranged
From about 30 down to 2.
and even that has really been successful. So we know we're almost out of time. We're glad that some of you have typed in your contact information and the topics, so we'll be reaching out to you. And Madeline, I think I ran into you in Boston, so I know your work, and we'll be getting in touch. The last thing we want to close with is we just want to let you know how much we appreciate any information that you could share with us about today's webinar. So we'll be emailing each of you a brief feedback form and ask that you send us back feedback at your convenience, because our hope is that we could take this webinar to regional, national, even international librarianship and other professional settings. So we really do appreciate everyone's time today. We hope this has been helpful, and that you enjoyed that it was interactive. If you have any questions that you want to type in, I don't know if we have any time left, but we'll be here. And certainly you can contact us by email. So we'll put that up on the screen.
You hear that bell? That was when we wanted to end. What a precision webinar.
So Eric says we still have actually a good 7 minutes. So if any of you do have questions, we will stick around. So feel free to type in questions. If you need to get back onto your regular job, we understand. But I do see this working at academic libraries. That's one of the questions. Absolutely. I think that it's really less about the type of library and more about the kind of community that exists within your system, so that you could hold this with students as your audience, with professors as your audience, with administrators, trustees, donors, drawing upon members of your community. It really is less about, is this for public libraries? It's really about entire communities.
And one thing that I'd like to say about the Handprint Party, having been in education for many, many years, one of my areas that I worked in for 25 years was experiential ed. And so what I'm well aware of is that information alone does not create action. And the Handprint Party, by its very design, is to be connecting information with our passions and our interests and getting our hands to get out and do things. So the end result of a handprint party is yes, information, yes, to fulfill where we want to go from the environmental point of view, and for us to personally take actions that are going to be useful to us and the environment.
And Bert does a great job at these parties and others who've hosted them of buddying up attendees and committing to an action. And then by having an accountability buddy, we build in not just the community connections and relationships, but accountability. And that's proven to be really pretty important. And we've heard some very interesting stories from people who months after the handprint party came back to recount actions that they took.
One story that I might recount is at one workshop, I partnered up and buddied with a woman I didn't know who came from a local community right across the river, and she wanted to put trees in her backyard. And so she made a commitment to put so many trees in. She had a pretty big yard, I think it was over an acre, and it abutted 2 other neighbors' yards. And so she emailed me that, yes, she had done what she said she was going to do. And then 3 months later, I got an email that said, you might want to know that not only did I plant these retaining plants where there was some erosion, but I got 2 of my neighbors, and she listed the hundreds of plants that they had done together. And that's the kind of thing that I think all of us can be delighted with.
So someone asked about using Twitter. Certainly Sustainable Roundtable has a Twitter presence. We could easily create a hashtag handprint parties and let people use a hashtag like that to share stories of either the actions they've taken or the parties they've organized. Yeah, there's a lot of great things coming through the chat box. We'll make sure to comb through it and send out, all these great ideas about, choosing local foods, using throwaway utensils, literally a sustainable party. I know here at our public library, we've gotten rid of all plastic water bottles that we used to distribute at movies and meetings. And so, the possibilities are endless. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of great ideas, and we're here to help you with a planning template and with a phone conference. And we're really excited that you guys have come. And I don't know, Eric, we're probably close to the end of the 7 minutes. So thank you all.
Yeah, we have about 2 minutes left, or 1.5 minutes to go. So you could maybe make one last point if you want to.
Okay.
We will feel successful. We do feel successful that you allowed us to put our ideas together, and we will take the feedback that you give, which will be asking what were the most helpful to you, and if there's anything you wanted to add to this presentation, we will build that into the next one. So thanks for being part of our first prototype Handprint Party webinar.
Have a great day, everybody.
All right. Thanks so much, Steve and Bert. I think that this was a really great webinar. I'm really excited with the ideas of a handprint party. So this presentation has been recorded, and we will be saving the chat as well. So those should be available. We will probably go back and redact out the email addresses that were put into the chat box, but otherwise those should be available on the Sustain RT events page shortly after, once we were able to get those saved and posted. And thank you everyone for coming out, and keep your eyes out. We'll be planning, the online ed committee will be planning another webinar probably sometime in the spring. So thanks everybody for coming, and have a great day.